Okay, welcome to the WPIAL Blitz Show. I'm Bruce Badgley, my partner over there, Ian McMeans, and this is already the Week 6 recap, Ian. I cannot believe how this season has flown by.
It has. We have surpassed the halfway point in the season, and it's all about the playoff races from here on out. We had some historic results this past week. Two of them really incredibly historic. We had the Shaler Titans beating Woodland Hills for the first time ever, and the Laurel Highlands Mustangs topping Thomas Jefferson for the first time ever. So we've reached out to both head coaches. They may both make an appearance on tonight's show. So they both said they were available, but things can come up at the last minute. So we're going to go through it. It's going to be exciting. And if we're able to have both of them on, that'll be great. But it was a great week in high school football, had a lot of close games. So we've got a lot to cover this week, especially with those two historic results. Anytime you beat a school for the first time ever, right? Laurel Highlands was 0-28 against Thomas Jefferson. They've been outscored like 140-3 the last 3 years, and then came back and beat them. Like, that's just awesome. That's so cool for that program. And same with Shaler. Like, Shaler between 2011 and 2018 won 2 games total. They had a 34 and a 24 game losing streak in that span. And, now to beat like Woodland Hills, like one of the historic premier programs of the WPIAL for the first time ever in 13 meetings, like that's a really great accomplishment too. So,
Well, hopefully we can give the coaches their due, but you've got control. So there's a lot to go through. Why don't we go ahead and get started?
all right, we will certainly get started here. So welcome to this week's edition of the WPIAL Blitz Show. You know where to find us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Thanks to the supporters and sponsors of our show, Sports Solutions Marketing, Get Recruited, and Brute Athletic, as well as SteelCityBlitz.com, where you can find all of my WPIAL articles, standings pages, and all that.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about those key results. We had those 2 massive upsets this week. And honestly, like those 2 games could have been, categorized in all 3 or all 4 of these, categories, but I had to just pick one to stick them in. So they got the upsets of the week. Biggest wins of the week, Highlands really taking it to Mars. Avonworth winning a close one over West Mifflin. Laurel beating Rochester, Greensburg Central Catholic beating Clairton, and Mapletown beating California. All those games, which we'll talk a little bit more about later, for the top spots in their respective conferences. Some noteworthy games: Franklin Regional just edging out Plum, and Deer Lakes edging out Knock. Knock stormed all the way back in that game. They were down by a lot, came back, scored a touchdown at the end, and went for 2 and got stopped. So, I gotta say, I admire that in a coach. Like, if you make a big comeback, don't play for overtime. Just go for the win at the end of the game. I like that.
Well,
then you don't have to like go to overtime and go through all that, extra time. Just go for the win at the end of regulation.
it's a smart play because you've exerted all this energy and all this emotion. Try and keep riding that emotion. I mean, you go to overtime there, you never go what's going to happen. You have control in your own hands. Go for it. I love the call as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then some other noteworthy results: Central Catholic beating Cannon McMillan, and then Gateway woke up quite a bit offensively to defeat Hempfield, who had been undefeated coming into the game. So
That was a shocker to me. Not that they won, but the margin of victory was incredible.
Yeah. I mean, for a Hempfield team that was averaging 45 points a game, and Gateway had been, kind of listless offensively for a lot of the year so far. But, Gateway woke up, and, I think I said at the end of last week's show when we did our little predictions that, I thought that Gateway got a bit of a scare, and that might, kind of bring them back at the end of their game last week, that they didn't lose to Plum, but Plum came back on them, made it 28-26 at the end, and that may have woken Gateway up, and it certainly woke Gateway up.
Wow, incredible.
Yep. All right, so our streak watch this week, nothing super noteworthy here. Nothing really changed. A lot of the winners won and the losers lost. And it wasn't really very close. The closest one was Knock, which went for that 2-point conversion at the end. Could have ended a 9-game losing streak. We're down to 10 total remaining undefeated teams and 13 remaining winless teams. So two of those dropped off from both sides. Two of the undefeateds lost, and two of the winless teams.
Pretty amazing how it's almost identical on winners and losers.
Yep. Yeah, as we go through the season, that's just that number will start to dwindle more too as some of these teams start to play each other, right? That you're going to have, Central Valley is going to play Aliquippa at some point in time, and things like that. So, yep. Actually, at some point in time is week 9. Actually, they play each other the last week of the season. So, I don't know why I said at some point in time. So I know when it is. It's coming soon.
Oh my!
Right. In conference play, there were a couple noteworthy results. Clairton losing to Greensburg Central Catholic, and actually shout out to Greensburg Central Catholic. That was the first time in over a decade they'd beaten Clairton. So they've kind of turned their program back around a bit too. And Shaler, that win over Woodland Hills, ended a 10-game conference losing streak for the Titans. Interestingly enough, on the bottom footnotes here, so Moon, which went undefeated in conference play last year, and South Fayette, who went winless in conference play last year, the result flipped. So South Fayette's conference losing streak ended, and Moon's conference winning streak ended. But other than that, the big results were
nothing,
Clairton and Shaler. Yeah, Clairton and Shaler, a couple streaks ending here.
That's right. That's right.
And we've seen some of these drop off so far this year, right? Like North Catholic's 25-game conference winning streak came to an end against Highlands. Penn Trafford's 22-game conference winning streak came to an end against Hempfield. So, we've had some we've had some of these longer ones start to drop off already.
Yeah, don't mind me moving around in the shot here because it's cold out on the deck.
That's your choice for sitting outside,
It's all right.
All right. Our Brute Athletic Player of the Week. This was just absolutely incredible. Aaron Randolph from Highlands. So Highlands' normal running back is Luke Bombalski, and their normal quarterback is Chandler Timmons. They put in this set with Randolph basically running as a wildcat quarterback. Stuck it in, ran a couple times in the first quarter. Then the second quarter, he ran for 4 straight touchdowns out of the wildcat. Also had a receiving touchdown in the first quarter, and then threw a 56-yard passing touchdown to Chandler Timmons, who's normally the quarterback. So
this is an oh, by the way, kind of let's put him in there, and this is what he does.
Yeah. Yep. So, but they were playing Mars, and Mars is a good team with a good coach, and you got to do something different to mix it up a little bit, give them a look they haven't seen before. So they stick Randolph in, and he runs for 180 yards and 4 touchdowns and puts up 6 total on the board.
That's crazy.
Yeah. This was just, absolutely wild. So let me see here. I think we've got some highlights here that we can show. I'm going to try and pull those up one second here. I got to switch my screen, but
I'll tell you what, well deserved there for Aaron Randolph for Highlands, and probably not one of the usual suspects.
No, not at all. And I mean,
Brute Performer of the Week.
Yeah, and six total touchdowns is just wild. I mean, starting the game is more normal kind of slot receiver spot. Gets the slot fade. Not a great camera angle there, but that was his receiving touchdown in the first quarter. And then things really started to open up once Highlands went to this wildcat set with him at quarterback. And like I said, in the first quarter, still, they tried it out a couple times and started to have a little bit of success with him running the ball.
Well, that guy's fast.
Yeah, he is. And then, started, still the first quarter here because, they're going right to left, but started to see some more success with it.
And I love when coaches like pull out the new looks like this that the team absolutely has not been able to prepare for.
Yep. And not just fast, but you'll see as we go, there's some power. All right, now we're into the second quarter. So this is the first of his 4 rushing touchdowns, where he beats everybody to the outside. And then Highlands got an interception on the next play on defense, which set set them up once again in scoring position. So back-to-back plays, almost identical off the right side. And then again,
I love the coaches jumping up and down on the sidelines on that last one.
yeah. Let's make it 3 straight plays. This one he's just running through arm tackles. And then arguably the most incredible one is this one from 65 yards out.
How did he get through there?
And it looks like he's done here, but no, he's not.
Oh my, great individual effort there.
And then here's the touchdown pass, which he throws it to Chandler Timmons, who normally plays quarterback. And this is just an absolute strike down the sideline, hits him in stride, and Highlands just went on to roll past Mars. Just an all-around great effort from Aaron Randolph, who is our WPIAL Blitz Brute Athletic Player of the Week.
Incredible that to have that kind of performance. And obviously he's just out there playing. He wasn't probably now. Maybe obviously he knew he was going in there in that particular package, but not one that they had shown previously. And God, that's what I love about it so much, is the imagination of the coaching staff to bring that formation in, to bring that package in, and look at the result.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you thought that was wild, check out our unit of the week, which is the Keystone Oaks punt return team. Not only did they return a punt for a touchdown against Charleroi, they blocked 2 punts and returned those for touchdowns as well. So 3 touchdowns from the Keystone Oaks punt return team, 2 of them off of blocks, which that's an incredible effort. Yeah. So the 2 guys in the picture here had 2 of the touchdowns. So
I'm glad I'm not that special teams coach that had that happen.
Yeah, that's just another, fantastic, wild, seems like every week we're talking about, like, can you believe that this happened? And so, yeah, just another one of those. So our other top performers from this week, we talked about Aaron Randolph from Highlands. Devin Betty from Burrell ran for nearly 300 yards and 6 touchdowns.
All right, here's Coach Kolesar here.
To make our players of the week. So I will stop sharing. We'll bring on Laurel Highlands head coach Rich Kolesar.
Hey, Coach, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Great. Thanks for joining us. Bruce Badgley here. Ian McMeans, how are you tonight?
Good. How are you doing?
Well, good. Ian, you have some questions for Coach?
I do. Congratulations on the big win over Thomas Jefferson. We had you on the show last year. You talked about how the team, had kind of adopted that "not your father's Mustangs" mantra, and now you've pulled off a victory over TJ for the first time in 28 meetings. So, what was it like? You guys really had to come up with some big defensive stands in the second half of that game, and it was credit to your team for just sticking with it and battling through adversity. So what was it like on the sidelines, as like it's the clock's ticking down and you're like, we might actually pull this off?
Yeah, I mean, the kids were excited. The student section was getting closer to the fence. We were down by our own band, and everyone kind of knew it was coming, but we were being smart, using our timeouts and making sure that we were ready to finish everything.
Yeah. So, how did you guys prepare this year for Thomas Jefferson? Because the last couple years, they kind of taken it to you a little bit. What was it like the week leading up to the game? Did you guys feel like this might be a special outcome, or it was obviously nothing's a surprise, but how was the week of practice?
Yeah, I think it was more than just a week. It was kind of our whole offseason mindset. We looked at last year, and our 4 losses were the final 4 teams in the WPIAL. So, we knew we had made strides, but we wanted to go further. So we talked all offseason. How do we beat the top teams? How do we beat them? And, so our kids knew going into this year, these were our goals, the Bell Vernon, McKeesport, TJ. And I think Bell Vernon was early in the year. We weren't really putting everything together. McKeesport, you were there for that. You know, we competed early and it kind of got away from us. So we knew we really needed to make a statement this week. So our kids had a great week of practice. You know, we approached it as, you know, we needed to win this game. And, you know, they really played hard on Friday.
That's awesome. Yeah. And you guys hit 2 massive passing plays in the first quarter that really kind of, you know, I felt like made a statement in the game that like, hey, we're here to play. We're here to win this thing.
Yeah. You know, we knew they were going to probably bracket Keandre. They've done that stuff in the past. So we kind of slid Antoine out this week and let him work at receiver. And, you know, when we had both of them going early in the game, it was really gave them fits of what to do. So we were able to, you know, break one with Antoine early and then come back with Keandre. And I think Keandre going down in the second quarter kind of changed our offense a little bit and slowed us down some. But yeah, it was definitely big to hit those plays early.
So you had Coach, how would you describe, you know, the team this year? Obviously you've had a couple of stumbles, but I mean, you know, your expectation for this team coming into the season and, you know, the team to date, how would you describe your team? Have they met expectations? Have they exceeded expectations, or are you still trying to get to your expectations?
I think probably trying to get to our expectations, you know, when you ask it that way. You know, I looked into this year and I thought we're 1 year away from being a great defense, but they've really sped that process up. You know, our defense has gotten really, really good the last couple of weeks. And then offensively, we've just been kind of molding into what we're going to be. You know, we've got a lot of pieces. The offensive line was our big question mark. And the last 3 weeks, they've really started to get better and better and gel as a unit. So I think our team is still improving, and they're on their way to some of the big goals we had this year.
Ian?
Yeah. So I have to ask, you know, Laurel Highlands as a team, you know, you won your first playoff game ever last year. So obviously I'm just guessing that probably ranks as the biggest win in school history. Is this the biggest regular season win in school history?
Yeah, I think last year was probably, you know, the biggest win, being that first playoff win, but I think this might've been the most surprising win. I don't think a lot of people expected us to win this game. You know, our team did, our coaches did. We knew we had an opportunity, and but I think this was a real shock for people, a real eye opener. You know, on a homecoming night to knock off TJ for the first time in school history, that means something for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it sounds like you know, culturally, you know, that now you're starting to get that, you know, the momentum. Okay. And it's a process to become a winner and to teach an organization how to win. How would you kind of say where you are in the process here of becoming that team that can reload year in and year out?
Yeah, I think we're kind of at that point right now. We've got pretty good depth. We're actually a pretty young team. If you look at our starters across the board, we're starting a lot of young kids. We're going to have a lot of returning pieces. Last year, our middle school had some success. Our numbers are up in the youth league. So I think we're in a good spot right now to where, you know, if we don't have a winning season, I think it's a disappointment. I think that's where we've made it to. So obviously our goals are bigger than that. We don't want to just say, you know, we're trying to win a few games anymore. Now it's how do we become one of the top teams and how do we get all the way every year?
Yeah. And speaking of going all the way, now with this win over Thomas Jefferson, you know, not to look too far ahead, because I know you guys take it 1 week at a time, but you know, you potentially could be in the running for hosting a home playoff game. What would that mean to the Laurel Highlands community to host a playoff game?
Yeah, we did it once before. It was my sophomore year of high school. We lost to Hampton. I think it was 17-10. So this would be the second one. And that's what we've talked to our kids about. You know, yeah, it's great that we won that game and, you know, we enjoyed it for the weekend, but today we were back to work and, you know, our goals are still ahead of us. We need to make sure we take care of business. The last 3 years, the Trinity game's been a 1-score game. Ringgold was close last year and Connellsville was just 15 minutes down the road. So that's going to be a rivalry game. So we have to bring it the rest of the year, but now it's in our control to host a playoff game this year.
Yeah,
that's, you know, there are so many coaches that come back and, you know, obviously coach their alma mater. Was that something that, you know, in the back of your mind as you, you know, went through your playing career that you consciously thought about that one of your individual goals would be to come back and lead this program and take it to the next level?
Yeah, that was definitely something I thought of, you know, even when I was in high school. You know, I love football. I wanted to be a coach someday. I wanted to play as long as I could. And, you know, when I ended up at Geneva, the path kind of led me in the direction to become a teacher. And then a job opened up at Laurel Highlands. So it's kind of all worked out in a way to put me back here. And, I want to do some things that have never been done here before. And that's kind of always been my goal, is to elevate this program to some new heights.
You've certainly done that already in, the time you've been there, just in the last 2 years, with winning the first playoff game and now the win over TJ. And you mentioned that I came down for the McKeesport game, and I agree with you. You guys were in that game, especially, at halftime. I hopped on the radio with Brian Moroziak from WMBS, and I was like, you guys played a great second quarter. You were really playing well in the trenches, and just like, like you said, kind of got away from you in the second half, but your line play has been really impressive this year.
Yeah, and they're a young group. Right now our left tackle, Devin Kravosky, it's his first year of offensive line, second year of football. Our left guard, it's his first year starting as a senior. Our center's only a sophomore. Our right guard is in his second year as an offensive lineman, and our right tackle's only in his second year. So there's not a lot of experience there as offensive linemen. They're good kids, they're tough kids, and they're learning to play the position every single week. And you're starting to see at this point in the year, it's really getting better.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
so,
Ian.
yeah. So, you mentioned the remaining schedule, and you have a bye week this week. So, what are you guys doing to kind of keep the kids focused? Obviously, like you said, the Trinity game has been it's kind of a budding rivalry that's been pretty exciting the last couple of years, kind of regardless of record. You guys have played tight games. So, how are you keeping the kids focused on the task at hand and the task ahead?
Our kids do a pretty good job of always staying focused, but we talked to them today about the goals still ahead and the opportunities that they've now opened up for themselves with that win last week. So we're having a good week of practice. We're keeping it a little bit light. It's a good time to get our bodies healed up. We got some bumps and bruises. We're able to rest up, but able to take some time and now focus on the basics and going back to some fundamentals and little things that could show up in big games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, you've really showed up in some big games so far this year. And, Coach, thank you very much for the opportunity to have you on the show once again this year. And I can't tell you how much fun it is to see not the usual suspects, in the playoffs, right, Ian?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. These are the reasons we started doing the show a couple years ago, was we wanted to start telling these stories that, might be a little more off the radar, and, try and highlight some programs that don't always get highlighted. And, I think Laurel Highlands is a great example of that, last year was a real turnaround year. You had the, best start in school history to begin the year. Then you won the first playoff game, and now you beat Thomas Jefferson, and the arrow is certainly pointing up. And, we have a lot of coaches that have talked about, kind of how important that youth pipeline is. So it's great to hear, that your program now kind of is building up that youth pipeline as well. Because that is kind of the sustained method of long-term success for a program, is having that pipeline of youth coming up and kind of running the same offensive scheme and knowing the same way to play. So that's really cool to hear. It's great. And, we love these kind of stories where, a program that has not had a lot of historical success starts to succeed. And it's really going to be exciting to see where you guys take it from here.
Yeah. One thing we talked about last year before that playoff game, the Thursday before, was, we have an opportunity to do something that the 56 teams in front of us couldn't do. But once you open that door, now everybody believes it's possible. So, that group last year, they did it. They won that first playoff game. And so now every kid at Laurel Highlands that comes through knows, well, we've done it before. And this group has now beaten Thomas Jefferson. So now we know that that's a possibility. And
the bar's been raised. Okay. Now the next team's got to take it to the next level. And, it just like you said, it just kind of breeds success. Okay. It's a process. You have to take it one step at a time. And obviously you took it with the playoff. Now you've taken it to Thomas Jefferson. Okay. What's next?
Yeah. That's what we're trying to find out. What's next? How far can we go?
Oh,
so
that's great.
I have one last question, actually. So kind of bigger picture too, that some of the other Fayette County schools have not had a lot of success in recent years. So not just, what does this mean for your program, but what do you think it means for kind of the football in Fayette County as a whole?
Yeah, I know I've talked to the coaches at Uniontown. They just got in charge of that team last year, and they're trying to do the same thing. And they know they're a little further away than we are when I took over. But they have the absolute mindset if they want to get back in, hopefully within the next 2-year cycle, and start building it up. But there's been very good football players here. It's about getting that consistency and getting people that want to invest into our community, because a lot of our kids don't all have the same home support and the same resources that some of these bigger schools and schools closer to the city have. So it takes, a staff and a booster program and administration that really want to invest into these kids to build success. And that's what we have going on here. The boosters are great. The administration's great. The parents, I mean, it's on all hands on deck staff here to make sure that we're having some success.
Well, we're just going to have to make this an annual visit. We'll just have to figure it out. I mean, hey, after you take it to the next level, I guess we got to have Rich on,
Absolutely.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, it sounds good to us too. Listen, Coach, thank you very much for your time tonight, and continued success. And man, fingers crossed, we'll see you in the WPIAL playoffs. Okay.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Thanks a lot for coming
man.
on. We appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank you. See you later. Yeah, we're just gonna have to check in with Rich. I mean, it's Rich now. It's not Coach Kolesar. It's like, now we can call him Rich. But
that's true. We're on a first name basis. No, he's great. He's always been a big supporter of our show. And like we mentioned that Laurel Highlands kind of as a program, didn't have a lot of historical success before Coach Kolesar took over. We mentioned they won their first playoff game in school history last year. They'd been 0-10 before that. Never won a conference championship as Laurel Highlands. Laurel Highlands was kind of formed in 1966 when North Union and South Union Township schools were merged together. But North Union had some success, South Union not so much. Interestingly enough, so down in Fayette County around Uniontown, North Union's north of Uniontown, and then South Union is south of Uniontown. Then Uniontown's kind of right in the middle. So Laurel Highlands kind of makes a donut around Uniontown City.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
And that's a very interesting area. I'm pretty familiar with the area there too. So
yeah, they have a wide geographic area. And I think, one of the things we've talked about too a lot on this show is when you have a large geographic area like that, it can be hard just to get kids to the building to work out during the summer, because they have to travel a lot farther than, like he mentioned, some of the schools closer to the cities that have, more resources and things, and just kids can get to the school. And it relies
so much on the parents.
Yeah.
I mean, probably more so in these outlying areas, so much is reliant on the parents when you consider, he talked about youth program and everything else. I mean, that's mom and dad getting the kid where they've got to be at the time they got to be there. And that's, I tell you what, that's involvement, and that's buy-in, and that's support, and, good for Laurel Highlands.
Yeah, absolutely. And, just to also talk about their big win that they had over Thomas Jefferson. So those 90 and 87-yard passing touchdowns in the first quarter, got a fumble return touchdown in the second quarter, and then really locked it down defensively in the second half. I mean, only giving up 7 points to Thomas Jefferson in the second half is incredible. And I had to throw out this sunset shot.
I was going to say a great sunset shot.
Yeah, I do this thing on Twitter, hashtag WPIAL sunsets, just because there's so many good picturesque scenic views in Western Pennsylvania. And so if anyone tweets a hashtag WPIAL sunset, I will absolutely retweet it. And the Laurel Highlands account did. So thank you guys for tagging me, because this was just an absolutely phenomenal shot. So speaking of those long passing touchdowns here, Rodney Gallagher actually tweeted out the videos to both of them, so we can show them both. So here's the first one. Coach Kolesar mentioned that Keandre DeShields, who's kind of the primary receiver, gets doubled, or was going to get doubled by TJ, and you can see him doubling up down here, single coverage up on top, and that's where he goes.
Oh man, the wind's picked up, and it is really getting cold, and it's starting to rain. Not in the highlight, out on the deck.
Yeah, no. So yeah, Gallagher hit Antoine Black in stride for the first one, and then the second one, this time they did find Keandre DeShields. This one, we see Gallagher rolling out, throwing on the run, hitting DeShields, who splits the double team, and then is just gone.
Wow. Good stuff.
Yep.
And funny, their colors are the same colors are the SMU Mustang. So
they are.
yeah,
yes.
and with the same helmet there. That's cool.
Yes. So yeah, just all around really, really great performance by Laurel Highlands to beat Thomas Jefferson, especially defensively, to shut them down in the second half. And thanks again to Coach Kolesar for joining us, and for all his support of the show. I know he will, message me on Twitter sometimes about things we're talking about, and always appreciate his input. So we were on the top performers of the week. And there was a lot of great performances. I mean, there were guys who put up 4 touchdowns that didn't make this list because I just didn't have room for them. We talked about Aaron Randolph, our player of the week. Devin Beatty from Burrell, 6 touchdowns and 300 rushing yards, and didn't even get the player of the week award because of what Aaron Randolph did with his 6 touchdowns. Braylon Lovelace from Leechburg also had 6 touchdowns. Brad Birch from Gateway in that big win over Hempfield, 5 total touchdowns, 4 passing, 1 rushing. Xavier Nelson, the wide receiver from Bishop Canevin, who was the 1A player of the year last year, had 3 receiving touchdowns and a rushing touchdown. Landon Stevenson, the running back from Mapletown, 4 touchdowns and kicked a field goal.
And where is the love for Mapletown? I mean, great season so far.
That's a story we probably should be talking more about. Is the Mapletown Maples have, we're another one of those little small 1A programs. Yeah, they made the playoffs last year, but not a lot of historic success. And just really have turned it around this year. They actually did win a conference championship back in 2005, which was their first one since 1988.
Wow.
Yeah, so Mapletown has won a couple conference championships in their history, not many, 5 in total, but Mapletown's a great story. They've got Landon Stevenson, a senior running back, just surpassed 4,000 career rushing yards. He's been a 4-year starter for them, and just a great story that they're going to have a showdown here in a few weeks with Monessen for the Tri-County South Conference title. And Monessen's another story. I mean, they went winless a few seasons ago, kind of have turned their program around and brought it back. So it's really cool to start to see some of these programs that have had some struggles historically to start to turn things around and get back on track.
Well, the reason I brought up Mapletown is I wanted to at least that I'm paying attention too, man.
Yeah.
You didn't even have to bring that up, but that's one of the teams that I've had my eye on and have seen kind of progress through the years. So we'll definitely keep an eye on Mapletown, that's for sure.
Yeah, and they've got a coach who's been there for like 30 years. He's been there a long time. So that's really cool to see him, have some success later on in his career as well. George Message, he's been there since 1984. So
wow. Oh my.
He's been the coach at Mapletown for longer than I've been alive. But
oh my.
I was born in 86. All right, moving on. So these were our top performers of the week. So congratulations to everyone, and shout out to the guys who I didn't have room for on the list. There were a lot of great performances this week.
We have fun on the show, if nothing else, right?
We do. and we are also very appreciative of the sponsors we have on our show, like Andrew Cohen at Get Recruited Consulting.
Get Recruited Consulting already has gone through some seminars. I know they've got a couple scheduled down in Virginia over the next couple of weeks, free recruiting seminars. The one last week was actually live streamed. We'll try and get those links to these live streams coming up here, but Andrew offering to take a look at your film for a free evaluation for you and your parents. He already scheduled his first camp. It's December the 13th. It'll be up in Scranton. Last year, there were more college coaches that we could fit in the group picture at his seminar in Scranton. I think there were over 70 colleges. I tell you what, definitely get on getrecruitedconsulting.com, Andrew Cohen, and for nothing more, give him a call. His number's there, 570-428-2872. I can promise you, Andrew will return your phone call, and if you send him some film, he will take a look at it and give you a fair evaluation. for no charge. Definitely get recruitingconsulting.com.
Yes, and we were very thankful for Andrew and all his support of our show. All right, so moving on, we're going to talk about the playoff races because they're starting to heat up here. All the conferences are now in conference play. We've had at least one conference game played by every team now. So we're going to start to see these playoff races heat up. The one big one to keep a note of is in 5A, only 8 teams are going to make the playoffs. So that means only the top 2 from each conference plus 2 of the 3 third place teams get wild cards. But there's going to be some really good 5A teams, especially the way they've all been beating each other, that are going to miss out on the playoffs. So the way the standings are set up, conference record determines things first. If teams are tied in conference record, head-to-head is the first tiebreaker, followed by Gardner points, which is a strength of victory metric. So basically, you get 10 Gardner points per victory of the teams that you beat, and victories only count conference games. So non-conference games don't count for standings, don't count for Gardner points, don't count for tiebreaker points. It's just the conference games that matter. And then the tiebreaker points is the margin of victory metric. So plus or minus up to 10, depending on the result. But if you lose by 11 or if you lose by 60, it's still only minus 10 or plus 10. All right, so let's look at it. In 6A, there are 5 teams. 4 of them make the playoffs. Everyone has a win, which means that the 5-way tie scenario is still in play, that these teams could all wind up 2-2 and having beaten each other. And that would just be the craziest thing.
That would be conference chaos.
It would be, yes, it would be absolute chaos if the 5 teams all wound up 2-2, and then somebody's going to miss out because only 4 of them are going to make the playoffs. So, that's where those tiebreaker points, especially the margin of victory points, start to come into play. So we've got every game's a big game because there's only 5 teams. So Mount Lebanon taking on North Allegheny is the only conference game this week. North Allegheny could clinch a playoff spot with a win, and that would also eliminate the 5-way tie scenario. If Mount Lebanon wins, the 5-way tie where everyone is 2-2 is still in play. So if you want to root for chaos, root for Mount Lebanon. If you want to root for stability in the standings,
North Allegheny.
Root for North Allegheny. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. In the 5A now, and let's remember that only the top 2 teams here are going to make the playoffs. So Bethel Park against Upper St. Clair for the top spot in the conference. 2 weeks ago, Upper St. Clair beat Peters Township.
But basically, looking at it, I mean, the bottom 3 teams are almost eliminated at this particular point, right?
Not quite. I mean, South Fayette's only 1-1, so they still have a couple more games, than the other teams have. If Peters gets the 3 wins this week over Moon, who's winless, Moon and Baldwin are essentially going to be out. But South Fayette's still in the mix. I mean, South Fayette still has to play Bethel Park, right? So let's say Upper St. Clair and Peters both beat Bethel, then Bethel falls down a little bit, and South Fayette has a shot to get into that 3rd place spot or whatever. So South Fayette's not out of it yet, but I mean, I think there's pretty clearly 4 teams that are better than the bottom 2 here. Mm-hmm. And the Upper St. Clair Bethel Park game this week is for the top spot in the conference. And Upper St. Clair right now, I mean, I saw them play Mount Lebanon this past week. They look like the team to beat in 5A.
Well, hard to believe that only one, most likely only one team between Bethel Park and Peters Township is going to make it.
Well, you never know. One of them could get the wild card.
Are those
too.
top 3? Well, that's true too.
Yeah. Because let's not forget that, Bethel Park last week just beat Penn Hills in a non-conference game. So if Penn Hills finishes 3rd in their conference and Bethel Park finishes 3rd, Bethel would have the advantage because even though they're not conference opponents, they would have played head-to-head. So yeah. It's complicated. Anyways, but as
just keep winning. Win, baby.
Just win. Exactly. All right. In the Big East Conference, there's a little bit of chaos happening here too. And that, Franklin Regional upset Gateway a few weeks ago. Gateway beat Hempfield. Hempfield beat Penn Trafford, but these top teams are all going to have to play each other. And like, don't sleep on Plum either, because Plum only lost by 2 to Gateway and by 3 to Franklin Regional. So yes, Plum has 2 losses, but like they were right in there with both of those teams. So there's the potential for some chaos happening here too. And the flip side is that chaos actually hurts you from a potential qualification, like for a wild card standpoint, that, if you have a third place team with 3 losses versus a third place team with 2, the one with 2 is going to have the slight advantage. So, this one, there's still a lot of games to play. The Penn Trafford Gateway rivalry game this week is, arguably one of the best games of the week in 5A, along with that Upper St. Clair Bethel Park game. And then the Northeast Conference, this one also got thrown into some chaos. Shaler now takes over the top spot in the conference with their win over Woodland Hills, because they have not lost a conference game yet. They are undefeated. North Hills has that win over Penn Hills at 2-1. And then, Penn Hills beat Pine Richland. So this one's a wide open.
Topsy-turvy. I mean, when you
Yeah.
consider, you would think that it would be the other way around. Penn Hills, Pine Richland, and Woodland Hills would be 1, 2, 3, not Shaler and, well, maybe North Hills, but definitely that just looks counterintuitive.
Yeah, well, and North Hills being there is kind of a result of having the 2 conference wins, just because of how the schedule has played out so far. But they do have a win over Penn Hills that they got in overtime. So, we'll see how this all plays out. But 5A is kind of chaotic right now. Kind of, yeah. So, as the season goes on, we'll probably get some more clarity as well. All right, moving down to 4A. Laurel Highlands, with that big win over Thomas Jefferson, now vaults to the 2nd spot in the conference. McKeesport, it's really, it's McKeesport's conference to lose at this point. They beat Laurel Highlands pretty handily. Laurel Highlands beat Thomas Jefferson. So really the only way that any chaos kind of happens here would be if TJ would beat McKeesport, and then you potentially have a 3-way tie where Laurel Highlands could share the conference title, between the top 3 teams. So, that game will happen in a few weeks between McKeesport and TJ. But really it's McKeesport's conference to lose at this point. But 4 of these teams are going to get into the playoffs. So you kind of have, your pretty clear top 3. And then it's pretty open between, Latrobe just beat Trinity, which could be the deciding factor if they're able to beat Connellsville and Ringgold. So I'd say Latrobe probably has the leg up here for that 4th spot, but you never know. Anything can happen. That's why they play the games. All right, the Greater Allegheny Conference. Highlands got that statement victory over Mars, which sets up a showdown in a few weeks with Armstrong, which will be probably for the conference title, essentially. The other important note here is that North Catholic now has 2 conference losses. They lost to Armstrong this past week. So only 4 teams are going to make the playoffs here. So this North Catholic Hampton game might be a deciding factor in the playoff race as we get down to it, because Mars is still right in the mix as well. So if my alma mater, North Catholic, wants to make the playoffs, they got to go out and beat Hampton this week, or else their run of playoff success is going to come to an end. So I know it's a bit of a harder road to hoe for North stepping up into 4A this year. They were in 3A last year, but hey, that's why you got to go out there and play. And Highlands against Armstrong is going to be just a great game for the conference title in a few weeks. And it's kind of cool how these things come full circle too. I remember back in the late 90s, going to like I said, my best friend went to Highlands
when you were 5 or 6 years old, right?
I was probably like 10 or 11 at that point, maybe 12. But I remember going to my best friend went to Highlands, and his older brother was on the team too. I think it was the 98 team. They had a game against Katanning for the conference title. And we went to the game to see his older brother play, and Katanning and Ford City merged to form Armstrong. So now, like 20 some odd years later, that almost 25 years later, Highlands and Armstrong, which is the successor school of Katanning, are right in the mix for the conference title as well.
Wow.
Yeah. All right, in the Parkway Conference, this one's all about
Battle
Aliquippa
of
and
the
Central
Titans.
Valley. But don't sleep on West Allegheny making a deep playoff run here. I mean, they took Aliquippa to the wire earlier this year. I mean, that was a 19-16 game. So we'll see how they stack up when they play Central Valley here in a couple weeks as well. Not really a lot of noteworthy games here. I will say that 5 teams are going to make the playoffs in the Parkway. So, the top 5 have kind of separated themselves a bit from the bottom 3 here.
Yeah, it's more for seeding rather than we know what teams. It's just what order.
Yeah, the only one that could potentially, get back into the mix would be Newcastle. So, if you look here on the teams that they've lost to, and Newcastle lost to Central Valley, West Allegheny, and Montour. And Blackhawk has beaten Ambridge and Chartiers Valley. So if Newcastle can turn around and beat Char Valley and beat Ambridge, then they'll have a game against Blackhawk basically for, the last playoff spot. So Newcastle could get back into it. Everybody else has a little bit of a harder time from an overall tiebreaker standpoint. But, this is the clash of the Titans where, McKeesport's a really good team too. But I wouldn't be surprised if, 3 of the 4 semifinalists in 4A come out of this conference because, West Allegheny's shown a lot to me this year that I think they're absolutely a threat for a deep playoff run. Moving on to 3A, these conferences just started conference play this past week. So, East Allegheny holding the top spot because they beat Valley by a lot. Freeport won a close 12-7 victory over Shadyside Academy. Deer Lakes beat Knock by that 1 point. So this is where those strength of victory points come into play that margin of victory points come into play. But this will all get sorted out over the next few weeks. These teams play conference games the rest of the way out. But I do think East Allegheny and Freeport are the best 2 teams in the conference. So I think the game this week will probably essentially decide the conference title. In the Interstate Conference, Elizabeth Forward got off to a big start with a victory over Southmoreland. Mount Pleasant beat Greensburg-Salem thanks to a big second half. But I think the story was Bell Vernon and their 56-0 win over South Allegheny. Because, Bell Vernon was a team that we talked a bit about earlier this year of, how concerned are we that Bell Vernon, started the year 2-2? Weren't they supposed to be one of the best teams in 3A? Well, yeah, but they didn't play any 3A teams the first 4 games, right? They played Laurel Highlands, they played McKeesport, they played Penn Trafford, they played Thomas Jefferson. So all the teams they played were 4A and 5A opponents. And, we said, hey, this team's I said, hey, this team's battle tested. They're gonna bring it once 3A play starts, and getting off to a 56-0 win. I still think, even with that 3-2 overall record, that Bell Vernon's still the team to beat in 3A.
Yeah, I do too. There's as you mentioned, they were really playing up early on, and now in conference is when they're going to shine, and that's all they need to do at this particular point.
Yep. All right, in the Western Hills Conference, West Mifflin got off to a great start, beating Beaver 2 weeks ago, and then played Avonworth in a really tight game. It was 14-8. Avonworth pulled out the win. So, the Lopes now have a pretty clear path to the conference title here, since they already have a win over Hopewell and West Mifflin. So basically that just leaves a game against Beaver this week, essentially between them and the conference title. Because, that's really the only thing that could throw any kind of kink into it. But I think Avonworth is a really good team. I think Avonworth is capable of making a run to the championship game. And they're definitely, one of the top 3 teams in 3A. I would put it at Bell Vernon, Avonworth, and Elizabeth Forward would be my top 3 teams. All right, on to 2A. In the Allegheny Conference,
Steel Valley just not getting any love. I mean, they are having a tremendous season.
They are, and they've got some big quality victories too. I mean, they beat a good Stowe Rocks team. And they've got some good wins here, but this is really just Steel Valley and Sarah Catholic are two trains on one track on a collision course for who's going to win the conference title.
Ligonier Valley, though, I tell you what, I think that it's nice to see them, back to be very relevant.
Yes. Yeah. I think the interesting thing here is in the playoff race, 4 teams are going to make it. So I think you've got Ligonier Valley already has a win over Apollo Ridge. They still have to play Burrell. Burrell and Apollo Ridge are, neighboring school districts outside of New Kensington in Westmoreland County. So, that's kind of a rivalry game there. And that Burrell Apollo Ridge game in a few weeks may eventually decide, who the last team is to get into the playoffs. So, when you get a rivalry game that decides a playoff spot, that's a pretty cool matchup. So yeah, I think the playoff race here is really the one to watch of who gets in. And Steel Valley and Sarah Catholic are both championship contenders. Have to throw that in for my Sarah Catholic folks, since they let me hear it on Twitter earlier this year. But no, they're both excellent teams. They're both WPIAL championship contenders. And as we saw last year, Steel Valley won the conference and Sarah Catholic won the WPIAL championship. So both teams are among the best in 2A. And their matchup later this year will certainly decide the conference title. Everyone else is just playing for those playoff spots. In the Century Conference, Stowe Rocks got a tight win. It was 6-0 over McGuffey. And this is actually something I wanted to talk a little bit about because, on paper, Stowe Rocks should have like a really explosive offense. They've got a great quarterback in Josh Jenkins. They've got, 5 dynamic playmakers on offense between their receivers and running backs, but they just haven't been putting as many points on the board as a team with that much talent. Like you think they should. Like you look at their output through 5 games against a team like Washington or and even beating McGuffey 6-0. Like I know McGuffey's strong in the trenches and all that. And Stowe Rocks has played up a little bit, right? They lost to Avonworth, who's a great 3A team. They lost to Steel Valley, but like I know Stowe Rocks has a new head coach this year. It doesn't seem like they're clicking offensively the way that I thought they would.
Well, you can see they're only 182 points for compared to Washington's 314. But look, they're going to be fine, I believe, in this conference. I think that
well, we'll see this week because they play Washington this
exactly
week, and that's basically what I mean. For the conference title.
Correct. And I think that I like Stowe Rocks. I mean, I think that they, just as you said, I don't think that they've played their best football. And we'll see, but I like them this week.
Yeah. And the teams at the bottom of this conference are not good defensively. So Stowe Rocks is going to put up some points, as the season goes on, just because their schedule is going to get quite a bit easier here after this Washington game when they get games against Waynesburg and Brentwood. And they smoked Keystone Oaks. So I was just, a 6-0 result for a team like Stowe Rocks. Was a bit surprising.
In any particular game, you would expect that they're going to score 3 or 4 touchdowns. Doesn't matter on their worst day.
I mean, yeah, exactly. I was gonna say on their worst day, 3 or 4, 7 or 8 should be cakewalk for them. Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right, and in the Midwestern Conference, a lot still to be decided here. Beaver Falls beat Riverside this past week, which pretty much gives Beaver Falls, I'd say, the inside track on the conference title, since they already have a win over Neshannock as well. Western Beaver at 2-1, Mohawk at 2-1 could also get into the mix, but Mohawk lost to Riverside, who got pounded by Beaver Falls. Western Beaver lost to Neshannock, who got pounded by Beaver Falls. So I really think this is Beaver Falls league to lose. And Beaver Falls is certainly a contender, to make a deep run in 2A. I mean, I would say in 2A, you've got 5 really, really good teams. You've got Steel Valley, you've got Sarah Catholic, you've got Beaver Falls, you've got Stowe Rocks, and you've got Washington. And, it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out between the 5 of them. Because a couple of them are going to, like Stowe Rocks and Washington, someone's going to lose this week. Sarah and Steel Valley, they have to play each other. Someone's going to lose there. So I think it'll be interesting.
I think Beaver
gut
Falls the prohibitive favorite in this Midwest Conference.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I would say my gut feeling, as unfortunate as it might be, is that, when you start to think about playoff seeding here, that, who the first three seeds would be, the three conference champions, assuming they're all undefeated. And then the fourth and fifth seed, who would potentially have to play each other in a quarterfinal, would be like whoever comes in second between, Stowe Rocks and Washington here, and then Steel Valley and Sarah Catholic up here. So those two second place teams may have to potentially play each other in a quarterfinal matchup. So kind of thinking ahead, but
I know
thinking ahead,
and yeah, I mean, there are only so many there are only so many WPIAL contenders, and so
yeah, and I think there's 5 in 2A, but that does get to the importance of winning your conference title, right? That then potentially you don't have to play that quarterfinal matchup against, like a Washington or a Sarah Catholic or a Steel Valley, right?
Having a bye week that I mean, going into the playoffs like that is just enormously valuable.
Yeah. Well, and actually going all the way back here, sorry. You're right. There are 14 playoff teams in 2A, so only 2 of them are going to get buys. So trying to figure out which 2 get first round buys between, Beaver Falls, Sarah Catholic, Steel Valley, Washington, Stowe Rocks, right?
That's what they're playing, and that's where the power, the form of the power ranking comes into play. Really, the only time in the WPIAL where there's any kind of power ranking, right? Where it's margin of victory, right?
No, and that it's almost like the NCAA tournament, that the WPIAL has a committee that seeds people.
But they're going to look at margin of victory.
Basically, yeah. They look at the
beauty
team's
contest,
resumes,
but
yeah, right, absolutely, yep. And I think like Steel Valley was the number 1 seed last year. Sarah Catholic won the WPIAL title last year. Beaver Falls made it to the championship game last year. I think things like that are going to help those teams just from their overall perception when it comes time for playoff seeding, because like it or not, and the WPIAL committee has changed the personnel over time, but they have tended to give the benefit of the doubt to like defending champions in the past. So, there were years in like back and forth classifications. There were years in Quad A where Central Catholic was the defending champion and got the number 1 overall seed, even though they probably weren't the best team, but they were undefeated and were the defending champions. So they kind of got the benefit of the doubt of being the number 1 seed again.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that helps, a team like Beaver Falls that made it to the title game last year, that won the championship 2 years ago. A team like Sarah Catholic that won the championship last year, a team like Steel Valley that was the number 1 seed last year. And the team that it hurts, honestly, is like a Washington that got knocked out in the first round last year, that if Washington beats Stowe Rocks, it still might not be enough to elevate them above one of those other teams and get one of those buys. And Sarah Catholic beat Washington head to head. So there's that.
Sure. Yep.
All right. We'll talk about 1A now. The Big 7 conference, Laurel got that win over Rochester. 4 teams are going to make the playoffs here. So there's 4 conferences in 1A. 4 teams are going to make the playoffs from each conference. So, that Rochester Union game this week is going to be a big one, just in kind of hashing out some of the playoff alignments. Laurel and Southside Beaver both moved down from 2A to 1A this year and have had a lot of success. And this is a case where, Southside Beaver 6-0 overall, but since they're both 2-0 and, the Gardner points, right, the strength of victory. So Rochester has 2 conference wins. Union has 1, so that's 30 Gardner points versus a Northgate and a Summit Academy that only have, 1 combined conference wins. So that's only the 10 Gardner points. So for now, at least, that's why Laurel's on top, but, they're going to play each other in a few weeks. So, there's 3 really good teams here. Laurel's good, Southside Beaver's good, and Rochester's good. And Union's won, Union's had some good results this year too. So Union just took it to Springdale, who might be one of the more disappointing teams in the WPIAL this year, because they're off to a winless start to the season. Over in the Black Hills Conference, I'd say the two probably presumptive favorites in 1A overall. Not just not just in this conference, but overall, they made it to the championship last year. Bishop Canevin and Olsh, both teams have just been slaughtering everyone they played. So they are the presumptive favorites, but the playoff race here got interesting because Burgettstown beat Cornell last week. And so that kind of threw the middle of the pack into some chaos that, now you've got Burgettstown, Cornell, a good Fort Cherry team in there. Fort Cherry's 2 losses were to arguably the 2 best 1A teams in the WPIAL. So don't count them out yet either.
Well, don't count them out from making the playoffs.
Right.
I mean,
that's what I mean. And but for some of these teams, right, like just making the playoffs is a big accomplishment.
Right. They're exactly right. I mean, there are, you make a great point. Your talking points are all on teams that are just trying to get into the playoffs, not the teams that are really contenders for WPIAL championships.
Yeah, and at this point in the season, it's all about getting in. I mean, Fort Cherry hasn't made the playoffs since 2017. They've had a 4-year playoff drought here. So for them, just getting into the playoffs would be a big accomplishment.
Sure would.
Okay. Over in the Eastern Conference, Greensburg Central Catholic beat Clairton and probably now has the inside track on the conference title. Nice to see Jeanette racking up a couple conference wins here after their down year last year. Nice little turnaround story there, but their 2 wins are over 2 of the bottom tier teams in Riverview and Fraser. So I think Clairton's a better team than Jeanette. So I think as this plays out, and Leechburg's a better team than Jeanette. So I think, as it plays out, I think it's going to be Greensburg Central Catholic, Clairton, and Leechburg as the top 3 teams. And then with Jeanette's win over Riverview, that puts Jeanette in a pretty good position to get that 4th and final playoff spot out of the Eastern Conference. But really it's Greensburg Central Catholic's conference to lose at this point. Their game against Leechburg is probably going to be the deciding factor. But if Leechburg beats Greensburg Central Catholic, then we could potentially have, a 3-way tie at the top where Clairton beat Leechburg, Leechburg beat Greensburg, Greensburg beat Clairton. So you never know. Still some things to be decided here in the Eastern Conference. The other thing I should note, actually, since I mentioned the 3-way tie scenario, so the WPIAL will award shared conference championships to any teams that finish with the same record, regardless of head-to-head. So yes, in this case, all 3 would potentially share the conference title. But in some other conference where I guess let's take 6A, for example, right? Where you have the 5-way tie scenario where all the teams could be 2-2. All 5 of those teams could get a conference champions plaque, and one of them might not make the playoffs because they could all share the conference title, which is wild.
Wow.
Yep. And then the final conference, the Tri-County South. We talked about Mapletown earlier. Their game against Monessen towards the end of October essentially will decide the conference title here because Mapletown has basically beaten all the other contenders. They beat Carmichael's. They beat California. California with those 2 back-to-back losses here to Monessen and Mapletown have kind of put their playoff hopes on the ropes. And, they have to beat West Green now to kind of stay in the mix. Carmichael's is going to have a say in it. Jefferson Morgan got another win this past week, a close one over Bentworth. So, there's some things to be decided here still in the Tri-County South in the last 2 playoff spots. I think Mapletown and Monessen are the clear top 2, but after that, it's pretty open. Okay, so let's talk about our games of the week here. In 6A, the only conference game between Mount Lebanon and North Allegheny. We talked about those 2 big ones in 5A, the Bethel Park Upper St. Clair game, the Penn Trafford Gateway game. In 4A, the Hampton North Catholic game, which I think will probably be a deciding factor in the playoff race there in the Greater Allegheny Conference. East Allegheny against Freeport, the game that I think will decide that conference title in the Allegheny 6 Conference in 3A. Mount Pleasant Elizabeth Forward, between 2 playoff caliber teams in the Interstate Conference, that Washington Stowe Rocks game in the Century Conference, which will essentially decide that conference title, and then Union against Rochester, Burgettstown against Ulsh, some other games between teams that are in their respective playoff races. So we'll see what happens as things go on this week. We did get that one question last week about doing some predictions. So I'll rattle off a couple here. Let's see. I'll go with North Allegheny, Upper St. Clair, Gateway, North Catholic, Freeport, Elizabeth Forward. I'm gonna go. Ooh, this is a tough one.
It's a tough
Washington
one.
And Stowe Rocks. I know.
I already took Stowe Rocks.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Washington. Actually, I'll do something different here, and then I'll go with Rochester and Ulsh for the last two. So what do you got?
Well, it was the same. Like I said, everything was the same, with the exception of the 2A there. I picked Stowe Rocks, and you got Washington. I kind of like the chalk that you kind of drew up on the blackboard for all the other games.
Yeah. Okay. So the thing we started last week, just for fun, you can tell us how wrong we are on Twitter.
Yeah.
Was our WPIAL top 5. So, Bruce asked me a few weeks ago, who would be your top 5 teams in the WPIAL, regardless of classification? So, North Allegheny lost to Pine Richland this past week. So North Allegheny dropped out of my rankings.
There's a big difference. It's almost the same teams, but look at here with Gateway.
Gateway beat Hempfield 60-7.
I
mean, if Gateway can play offense like that every game and defense, I mean, Hempfield was a team they were scoring against anybody. I mean,
I'm liking this now. I mean, last week was very similar. Now this week we really have like some talking points here.
We do.
I mean, you obviously favor Aliquippa. I mean, I like them too, but it's like, all right, Upper St. Clair. Obviously, Central Valley, but I got them 1, you got them 4.
Yeah.
Gateway in there instead of the big difference, I think, is Gateway with a loss and Highlands, who's undefeated. Let's talk about that, my friend. I mean,
sure.
I mean, obviously, Gateway's got the pedigree of the Birch brothers and scoring points and what have you. Highlands, though, undefeated. I mean, they've pretty much proved it on the field so far, haven't they?
They have, yes. But I think Gateway's one loss was kind of an upset with with Franklin Regional, and I think if Gateway plays the way they played against Hempfield, because like I said, I think last week I said Hempfield was right on the borderline for me. They just didn't get in. And Hempfield was really impressive, and I think Gateway, like we said earlier, the margin of victory there was shocking. That it was a 60-7. I mean, they beat them by 53 points. That was a Hempfield team that was averaging 45 a game. And Hempfield have been playing really good defense too. So to put up 60 against that team and to hold them to 7, if Gateway can play like that,
it's a tough decision. I mean, quite honestly, I'll be honest with you, I wasn't going to put a one-loss team, in the top 5. Clearly, I think we both have talked about the fact of, at least anyway, I think that Gateway's kind of underachieved. I think that it's a team that is definitely going to go deep in the playoffs and definitely a WPIAL contender, in 5A. But Highlands is undefeated in 5A.
4A.
Or 4? They're in 4A?
4A, yes.
See, I thought they were 5A.
No, they're 4A. They're in the Greater Allegheny Conference with Armstrong and North Catholic and.
All right.
Yeah.
I stand corrected, but it doesn't mean that I'm going to take them out of the. It's tough that we have all those. I've got all those 4A teams in there, but it is
what it is, though. I mean, I think and the way I looked at this too is in any given game, right? Who would win, right? I would take Aliquippa with the team they have over any team in the WPIAL right now, right? They've got incredible size on the line on both sides of the ball. They've got skilled playmakers. They've got, one of the best secondaries in the WPIAL, like Donovan Walker at safety and their cornerbacks. Like the Lindsays at linebacker, Cam and Nate Lindsay, like they're so good on defense that like teams just can't move the ball against them. And then those guys turn around and play offense, and you've got a quarterback in Quentin Good who threw for like 300 some yards and 4 touchdowns this week. Plus, Taquai Hayes at running back is a sophomore, and already has major Division I offers from pretty much everybody, and just like runs over people. I mean, that's just Aliquippa is so good and so deep. Like any team, regardless of classification,
look,
if they played him on the same field, I would pick Aliquippa to win, and that's why
ultimately it will play out between Central Valley and Aliquippa. I mean, I mean, in the long run, I mean, they're in the same conference, they're in the same classification, so ultimately somebody's going to win the WPIAL championship out of there. Same thing as with Highlands and McKeesport. I mean, it's all going to equal out in the end, and so it's all going to maneuver around in the fact that we're going to get more 5A teams. We might even get who knows, maybe a 2-loss 3A team, i.e. Belverdon. May end up in this top 5 before it's all said and done. I don't know. I mean, it will be very interesting as it all plays out, and I do believe that ultimately there's going to be ultimately there has to be a 6A team emerge. I mean, the champion isn't going to have 3 losses, are they?
I don't know. Maybe. I mean, it's possible.
The 6A champion, 3 losses. Has that ever happened? I guess you got to go to the spreadsheets.
Yeah, it has.
Really?
It definitely has. Well, wait, are we talking 3 losses overall or 3?
Yeah, 3 losses overall. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it definitely has. Yeah. Well, and think about it though, because all these teams have non-conference losses, right? That North Allegheny just lost to Pine Richland. Seneca Valley has all these teams have conference or non-conference losses. So if there's a what do we call it, the 5-way tie scenario, that it's possible. So
is Cannon McMillan going to be a spoiler?
They could be. I mean, they beat Seneca Valley pretty. Cannon Mac's got a good offense.
I'm just saying it's that's what I'm. They're gonna win their share of games down the stretch.
Yeah, and they were beating Central Catholic at halftime, and Central got a couple turnovers on defense and hit a couple big passing plays to come back and beat Cannon Mac. But this is wide open at this point. So every game's going to matter. Every week's going to matter. So we'll see what happens here.
Do you think? Oh well,
and the 5-way tie is still in play. Is all I'm saying.
And well, I know that we're kind of digressing here, but we didn't really talk about it too much. But your thoughts on the Pine Richland Central Catholic game?
Oh, you know what? I'm glad they're playing each other, to be honest with you.
Me too.
I think both teams have kind of underachieved a little bit this year. Central's 3-3 and Pine Richland's also 3-3. But and Pine Richland just beat North Allegheny though. So it's kind of like, I'm glad that even though Pine Richland dropped down to 5A, that they're still playing some of these historic rivals from 6A that were these really good teams that they played a lot of important, meaningful games against. So I'm glad we're still getting these games. The Pine Richland North Allegheny game was a big rivalry game, still is. So I'm glad we still get these non-rivalry games as non-conference games.
Yeah, but you didn't say who you were going to pick.
Oh yeah. Oh boy. Central Catholic's a weird team this year because on paper they should be like the presumptive favorites in every game they play, but they just haven't quite delivered on it yet.
No. If there's a team that's totally underachieved so far, it is Central Catholic. I mean,
they might be the most disappointing team in the WPIAL this year, just based on what my expectations were for them versus how they've actually performed on the field. I don't know. Like I said, but I thought North Allegheny was better than Pine Richland last week, and Pine Richland beat them. So I don't know.
It's like who shows up. Yeah, obviously,
Right. Right. I mean, well, and Pine Richland did make some changes though. They moved Ryan Palmieri from running back to quarterback, and Ryan had played quarterback for them last year when Cole Boyd got hurt, and Ryan had some success at quarterback, and then they were playing him at running back this year, but they moved him back to quarterback last week. So I think if they stick with if they stick with Ryan Palmieri at quarterback this week, I think that makes them a different team too.
Yeah, it makes them a different team. Correct. And the only tough part is that they're playing at Central Catholic.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that makes a huge difference.
I think it does in this game, but it's hard for me. I'll be honest with you. I think that it's hard for me to pick anything other than Pine Richland there, because I think Central Catholic is such an underachiever so far this year.
Yeah. Well, and I guess, wait, let me see where the game actually is, because Central doesn't have their own field. So, they're playing at Carnegie Mellon. Okay. That's right next to Central's campus. So, they're playing at Carnegie Mellon Stadium, which is right next to Central's campus. So it's basically a home game for Central. Since Central doesn't have their own field, if Carnegie Mellon's using their stadium for something, sometimes they'll go play at like Fox Chapel or something like that, which would be more in favor of, Pine Richland. Yeah. But yep. All right, cool.
All right,
so that is our show for this week. Unfortunately, we're not able to get the Shaler head coach on. But thank you all for joining us. You obviously know where to find us on YouTube. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and check out all of my articles on steelcityblitz.com. And we'll be back next week with another edition of the WPIAL Blitz Show. Thanks again to Coach Kolesar for joining us this week, and congratulations to both Shaler and Laurel Highlands. Even though we weren't able to get Shaler's coach on, congratulations to them both on their historic victories.
Yeah, let's just unshare your screen so they can see us.
There we go.
There we go. As we head out here, I want everybody to see all my decorations for one last time. I spent so much time decorating the deck here, and
one last time. We got like a month before Halloween. You got to change it.
That's the thing. I think this is the second week in a row I've had the same decorations out here. I am going to have to change it, and I'm probably going to be trying to figure out what I'm going to wear like the week before Halloween. So, the last week there before Halloween, I don't know, something, I can tell you that. And it's not a mask, but something will be on there, I can tell you that. So, but I got to come up with some other Halloween stuff. I think maybe actually like a real pumpkin, with like lights in it for next week. Who knows? We'll figure out something. And maybe, but I see that's the stuff that, because I'm gonna have to change. Now it's Halloween, and then I'll have to like change to like, the whole Thanksgiving thing. So I don't know if I have to put like a turkey, or maybe I put some different lights behind me. I don't know. Let us know, man. Anybody interested in some specific decorations? I mean, I'm at Badgley. Bruce, let me know. All right. All right, my friend. Listen, it's always a pleasure. And this is so much fun. I can't tell you. It's always fantastic to get together with Mr. WPIAL there, Ian McMeans. All right.
Yep. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We appreciate all your comments, retweets, everything else on Twitter. Keep chatting with us. We'll chat back, and have a good week, and we'll see you next week.
We are out.